Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Lightning Talk session WT2 2021. My name is Kavita Riali, and I'm a Principal Program Manager at the Microsoft Cloud Operations and Innovation team. I was one of the presenters last year, and it was one of the most high-rated and most power-packed sessions of WT2. It's my honor to host the session today, and thanks for joining us. Talking about resilience, the theme for WT2, today we have 5 session series of inspiring resilience stories by 6 diverse, powerful women. The speakers, Sarah Egan Warren, Sarah Glova, Rachel Onamusi, Harninder Bassi, Olga Specjalska, Mamta Suri. In reading their bio, I feel honored and privileged to know them and thank them for sharing their background and experiences in modeling attributes of resilience in leadership through the pandemic times. You can find their full bios in the VOVA app. In the format today for each of the speakers is they get 10 minutes and it includes a 3-minute Q&A session. You can also continue to ask your questions in the VOVA app throughout the session and after. With that, I want to hand it over to our first 2 speakers on the topic, Reframing for Resilience by Sarah Egan Warren and Sarah Glova. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Reframing for Resilience, fighting the forces that impede our work, stifle our creativity, or keep us from starting in the first place. Today, we'll approach this topic through a virtual reframing exercise.
And we're thrilled to be kicking off the Lightning Talk session, so let's get started.
The way someone shows resilience is as distinctive as a fingerprint. Your individual ability to persevere through challenge and to demonstrate toughness is as unique as you are.
Yes, and that's why today, together, we're going to do an exercise that will ask you to think about a time you showed resilience. We're going to talk about what that looked like for you and which of your strengths you called on when you had to show resilience.
First, let's talk about the why before the how. Why do we need to be focusing on resilience right now? Well, when we look at the TrustRadius 2021 Women in Tech report, the takeaways highlight the difficulties many of us are facing right now. COVID-19 severely impacted women in tech.
Women in tech are carrying even more household work now than before COVID-19.
Bro culture is still pervasive.
And women are still outnumbered in the tech industry.
Women in tech have to work harder to prove their worth.
And face more barriers to promotion in tech.
And gender equality hasn't changed over the past year.
And we know, wow, that's a heavy list. None of those things are a surprise necessarily, but it's still heavy. We wanted to start off with this because let's keep these challenges in mind and practice some self-compassion. We are already achieving a lot just by surviving.
So today is not about adding another layer or another to-do list. We're already facing a lot with the current climate. Instead, today is more about recognizing and even celebrating the ways that you already show resilience and intentionally reflecting on how you can employ those same strengths, the strengths you know you have, strengths you've already shown moving forward.
So let's get started. First, we're going to ask you to do a quick reflection. Let's go over the instructions quickly, then we'll give you time to do the exercise. You can write notes down on a scrap of paper or put text into a note on your phone, or if you'd prefer, you can just do a focused daydream. I'm not going to ask you to share your reflection with the group. This is for you. So to start, for part 1, consider what resilience has looked like for you. Think about an example or examples of when you've shown resilience. Don't feel pressure to pick the perfect example here, just anytime you've shown resilience. You can always go back and redo this exercise with a different example. Once you have at least one, then you'll move on to part 2. And for part 2, ask yourself, what did it look like when I showed resilience? In other words, what was the context? What did you have to do or stop doing? Once you've thought more about the situation, then you'll move on to part 3. And for that part, please ask yourself, what strengths did you call on? In the example that you're thinking of, in that context, what strengths did you have to show? What skills? And that's it. So we're going to pause now for about 40 seconds. Go ahead and go through these 3 parts, jot down a few words, or just have a brainstorm moment.
Okay, time's up. I hope you have had a chance to get an example in mind, and please keep that example and any notes about your strengths that you showed at the front of your mind. And this is going to help personalize the framework to make sure it's about you and your strengths. So here's a preview of the framework that we're going to be working on. And we've shared the link in the Whova chat, and you can use that, or you can just follow here on the slides. And as you can see, you're going to write your own definition of resilience. And you're going to come up with 3 frames that you can adopt when you need to flex your resilience muscle. We'll talk more about the frames, but let's start with that first part of the framework, the definition. So with your personal example in mind, ask yourself, how do you define resilience? And let's workshop this together. We invite you to put some words in the chat that describe what resilience means to you. These can be words that came up during this exercise or just free association. What do you think about resilience? And drop those in the Whova chat.
Thanks to Ingrid for her tech support. We've got the Whova chat open. If you'd like to share some definitions of resilience, we'll be excited. Oh, some are coming in. I see, staying strong, true to yourself, strength in the face of adversity, surviving life's up and downs, small step forward. Lots of inspiration here in the chat, Sarah.
Thank you so much for participating by sharing your thoughts there about resilience. You can keep them coming in the chat. That's fantastic. Now, we want to be transparent and share our definition of resilience. Resilience is persevering through challenge in order to intentionally pursue an authentic purpose. We have developed and refined our definition over time, and it was based on our discussions and research with women leaders. It's shaped by those conversations and crafted to support our research. We share all that in order to emphasize your definition should be a tool for you. Our resilience definition, it may not be as useful to you. So we want to support you as you come up with your own definition.
And a footnote here, since our definition of resilience mentions persevering, we are not saying, hey, you can persevere through anything. It's not that simple, especially right now, while we're dealing with a pandemic and many of us are addressing issues from misogyny to systemic racism. The 2 Sarahs are firm advocates of coaching, mentoring, and seeking professional help. So in other words, persevering does not mean suffering silently or alone.
Right. Now, our definition may feel a little textbooky, so let's look at one more before we ask you to write your own. Remember, as part of your framework, you're going to come up with your own definition, and sometimes that can feel daunting, but you don't have to come up with a textbook definition. It can be something simple, like this example from Linda Graham.
Linda Graham wrote the book, literally, on resilience with Resilience, Powerful Practices for Bouncing Back from Disappointment, Difficulty, and even Disaster. She said in an interview that resilience is simply bouncing back from the terrible, which is a pretty accessible definition.
You know, I've also heard some people calling resilience bouncing forward, which is a great physical metaphor. So bouncing or recovering, but not back to where you were, but growing with the bounce and moving forward. So some people collect bobbleheads, some people collect shells. We collect definitions of resilience. And from our growing collection of definitions, we've created this infographic. Notice how many nuanced facets there are to this complex term. We're going to go and use this infographic as part of our next exercise, but first let's take a look at it together. There are 10 main clusters of components to describe resilience: reframing, mindset, health, social, purpose, flexibility, belief, emotion, competence, and planning. These bigger circles, and we call the circles leaves in the infographic, these bigger circles have a thick border, and you'll notice they're different sizes. So the larger the leaf, the more common that cluster was in the different definitions. So for example, mindset is our largest leaf because it's mentioned most often. And you can see that some ideas overlap. So see how attitude is two different colors because it shows up in both mindset and reframing. All of the leaves you see here were gleaned from our collection of resilience definitions.
You're welcome to download the resources that are in the Whova chat or just look at it along with us. But to use this infographic, consider that you're at the farmer's market and you're picking what looks best to you. You don't have to use everything in this infographic, just like you wouldn't purchase everything at the farmer's market. The goal is to browse so you can find what you need. We're going to ask you to use this infographic to help write your own definition of resilience. So scan the branches and notice what is useful to you right now, or what speaks to the example that you were reflecting on with us earlier. And then start drafting. Write down some of the concepts that resonate with you. For example, if faith is a word that jumps out to you, then part of your working definition could be the strength of sticking to my faith. Your definition doesn't have to be dictionary ready or even shareable at this point. If you're uncomfortable trying to come up with a definition, if that sounds too formal, maybe think of it as a mantra, your resilience mantra. So please use this infographic, pay attention to words that call to you, and then look at words that are near for more inspiration. Use these branches to build a working definition or mantra for resilience. We're going to give you a quick 30 seconds to let you work on a very rough draft.
So hopefully you have at least a rough draft of part 1 of the framework, your definition of resilience. Now let's work on part 2. And the second part is what we call frames. And frames are like actions or mindsets that you can adopt when things are challenging, like when there's a pandemic or you're the only woman in the room. So why should we write down these different frames? Well, it's to have reminders that you can call on when there is a challenge in front of you. You can choose empathy, you can choose bravery. The goal is to decide now how you want to act when you are faced with a challenge. And the reason to go through this exercise now is that the time to figure out these different frames of mind and how they can positively serve you, it's not when you need them. The time is now. So let's brainstorm 3 frames that you want to adopt when you need to be resilient.
And one strategy is to think about your strengths, the ones that you reflected on earlier. Write them here to remind yourself of how you respond to challenges. And another idea, look at the infographic again. Seek out words that you want to embody. Pick out some words that speak to you and turn those into your frames.
So let's walk through an example. Say my definition of resilience is moving forward while staying true to myself. How do I include the frames? Well, I might adopt a frame of health, reminding me to really focus on self-care when I'm challenged. And I might take on a mindset frame, reminding me to focus on staying calm. And I might take on a belief frame to focus on maintaining hope and faith.
And as you can see, the frames are reminders of how you can take control and act in a way that best serves your strengths and your resilience. Think of your definition as the goal, and the 3 frames are different options of how you get to that goal. And remember, this is a tool that you can come back to. So sometimes you may be at a loss of how to proceed, and the 3 frames that you've brainstormed here may not fit. But you can come back to this exercise again and again. Use the resilience tree to explore other frames that might help you to be your best resilient self in each situation. And if you continue exploring different ways that you can reframe for resilience, then you're going to strengthen those neural connections that light up in your brain when you respond to challenges.
So to wrap up, we want you to reflect on how your perspective on resilience has changed today. Take a moment to consider your framework that is unique to you as your fingerprint.
And use your framework to help fight the forces that impede your work, stifle your creativity, or keep you from starting in the first place. When those challenges approach, return to your framework. Remind yourself of how you see resilience and all the different frames that you can adopt to embody resilience. And as we head into these next lightning talk sessions, we're excited for you to hear from more great leaders on the topic of resilience. And as their stories resonate with you, consider adding some of their suggestions and inspirations to your resilience framework. All right, and I think we're ready to move into questions.
Hi, Sarah. I'm waiting for the questions to come in on the chat. For everyone viewing, please use the chat in Glova to drop your questions. I have a question. Do you have a moment specifically in your career where you found yourself to be resilient, and how did you work through it?
Well, I think it's a cop-out, I guess, to point to COVID-19, but that is the one that, of course, pops into my mind. I teach professional communication to graduate students, and not only when we moved everything online did we need to change the delivery, but we also had to address the content and change all of the content, because giving a presentation in a Zoom window is much different than giving a presentation in a boardroom, in a classroom, in front of a client. And so it was a big challenge last year to make those changes, but one that I definitely called on all of my resilience to do.
And Ingrid, I love Sarah's example, and I can think of a couple COVID ones as well, but just for a different answer, I think that the way that I used to think about resilience before Sarah and I started this research, I would think about the mountaintop moments, the really, really big achievements. But lately I've been reframing my thoughts on resilience, and I've thought about the smaller moments, the time where I decided to sit a little bit more forward during a really important executive meeting, even if I felt something inside me wanted to go sit in the back, maybe in the corner. I've convinced myself to go pull up a chair more toward the front of the room. And at times where I felt like maybe someone didn't introduce me and assumed that I wasn't part of leadership, and I put my hand out for a handshake. We don't do that in COVID anymore, but put my name in for an introduction and kind of stood my ground there. I think of some of those smaller moments more when I think about resilience now.
Absolutely, and thank you both for bringing those examples. We do have some more questions in the chat. One of them is, do you use different frames for small day-to-day stress versus a big life change?
Right, and I think that picks up right after what the other Sarah was just talking about, that you can adjust your frame. So if we think about big frames and little frames, my favorite is bravery, that you can sometimes be brave in small little steps, that maybe it feels hard to ask for that introduction, or maybe it feels difficult to reach out to a client or to stick up for yourself during a staff meeting or in front of a leader that you feel a little nervous around. And bravery could also be in big things as well. So you can adjust your frame to fit the size of the challenge in front of you.
And I think as you practice using it, you think of more ways. So for example, for me, I think of self-care so much differently than I used to. That's one of my big frames, is self-care, but it looks different than just a bubble bath. Like, sure, if you've had a stressful week, that might be nice. But for me, self-care is more, if my 1-year-old is screaming during dinner time and I'm feeling that panicky stress and I know I need to stay calm, in that moment, self-care is a deep breath and maybe counting to 10. Whereas if it's been a terrible meeting, or I've got a high stress session coming up with a client, that self-care might look like a long run. Probably can't do the long run while feeding my 1-year-old. So you've got, you have to adjust. And so that's how I think, as you practice using a frame, you can apply different strategies for it to different situations.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sarah and
Thanks,
Sarah.
Kavita.
Yeah, Ingrid, I think we're ready for the next presenter. I want to thank both Sarah Egan Warren and Sarah Glova for a great presentation and your Q&A. Ingrid, thanks for coordinating. So our next speaker is on the topic Bend Without Breaking. And we have Rachel Onamusi presenting to us. Over to you, Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, or good morning even. I'm Rachel Onamusi, and I'm just going to start that again. I'm Rachel Onamusi. I'm the CEO of VNSync. And today we're going to talk about bending without breaking, or better known as the role of resilience in boosting career outcomes for women in tech. So jumping straight into it then, the first thing I want to talk about is we all know some of the stresses when it comes to stresses in the workplace. Yesterday, some of the ladies I spoke with on a panel on this Women Transforming Technology platform mentioned things like being ignored at meetings and questions going for their male colleagues who usually worked for them. There's absolutely a place for, there's things like microaggressions from race and gender bias, or even inflexible work structures and arrangements. So there's absolutely a place for human contact and group meetings. But it's crazy to think that COVID was what was responsible for bringing remote working to tech, an industry that could have and should have embraced it the most. So things like creches or structures or infrastructure put in place to help women thrive in tech just simply weren't there. There was also a lack of role models, mentors, or sponsors, anybody who could help you move ahead, get better, think better, promote yourself, or give you the support you need for the skill sets that you already had, which is simply not there. So we already know about the stresses in the workplace, blatant sexualism or what have you is giving way to these little microaggressions. But then we need to talk about, well, what does resilience look like? How do we cope when we know all of these stresses and all of the things that make working in tech for women such a difficult place to be? Today, I want to talk about resilience being a doing word. A lot of the times I hear people talk about resilience almost like an innate skill, like being able to, wiggle your ears or roll your tongue. It's none of these things. You can make yourself think and act in ways that get you through tough times and boost your career. So for example, I didn't think I was tech worthy. I come from a very strong background of PR, media, and communications. But let me tell you for free, I know nothing about coding. I think a cloud is something that's up in the sky. And I sometimes have to hack into my own email box. Oh, this is the wrong password. Okay, put in the password again. Okay, what's your mother's maiden name? Okay, what's your mother's favorite? It went on and on. So all of a sudden I found myself in rooms where there were CTOs and CIOs and women engineers who were really, really gifted in the tech space. And this simply wasn't me. And I suffered seriously with imposter syndrome. I thought, this can't be the right space for me. Do they know what I do? Am I going to get found out? And then or sometimes I'd be in a room and I would think I was doing a great job until I find someone more techie, specifically if it was a woman who was more techie come into the room. And then I would subconsciously start to dim my own lights. But hanging in there, riding the rough waves and finding myself resilience, even when dealing with a steep learning curve, is something that I had to learn to do, and we can all do. So I created something called the Frame Network, or the framework, if you like, from responses that I got from interviewing hundreds of women who were middle management, senior management, and executive level management women, to say, well, how did you do it? How did you get to be how did you deal with all of these stresses and all of the factors and things that we can't always articulate that come our way all the time? And they get broken down into this acronym, which I named as FRAME. These are not in any specific order. I just arranged them this way because it makes a nice acronym that I can remember. So the framework or the strategies for resilience are thus. The first thing is just simply facing down imposter syndrome. Corporations do not get where they are by recruiting out of pity or tokenism. If you're in the room, it's because you are meant to be there. You do nobody any favors by shrinking away or not speaking up on your own good ideas.
Rachel, just you can switch on your camera. Thank you.
Sure, I'm just gonna do that right away.
Thanks.
Hi, can you see me?
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kavita. The second is R&R, or rest and relaxation. This is a work-life balance necessity. You need to take the time out. I know there's lots of toxic information such as, oh, she's fantastic, she's the first one in and the last one out. Well, let me tell you something, this just results in breakdown, in not just physical breakdown, but mental breakdown, where your creativity is completely impeded and slowed down, and you're just struggling to be as great as you know you can be. The third is adopting boundaries. This negative idea of the superwoman and its backhanded comments, ditch it. Don't respond to emails outside of work hours. Don't take on any more than you can do. Don't say yes to projects that are not part of your purview just because you want other people to not see you or to not think that, or to think you're not a team player. You can be committed and take time off. You can be a good leader and delegate tasks. You can be consistent and have an occasional bad day. You can be a problem solver and ask for help. You can be flexible and prioritize family. You can work hard without overworking yourself. Adopt the boundaries, learn how to say no, and make time for your sanity. The fourth is mentorship. 60% of the women I spoke to indicated that they've had mentors. 74% say their mentors included men and women. And 76% say having a mentor benefited their careers. I personally have mentors and accountability partners, and they are of every gender and race. I just need to see you making the kinds of moves and values that my thought system aligns with. And I will step up to you and say, listen, could you help me with this? And I was wondering if you could give me some feedback on this. The final thing is engagement. A lot of women are in positions where their qualifications and their capabilities have already spoken for them. What they don't have more of is engagement. It's not people thinking they didn't have the tools or the competencies. It's just becoming clear that people felt they were crucial to their success to be more visible, more involved, and more engaged. Let me end by saying, when it comes to resilience, we make the choice, and then the choice makes us. You make the choice to say, I want to be more resilient. I can do this. I do deserve to be here. I can make my way through this hardship that I'm facing, this steep learning curve, everything I'm trying to work towards. And then suddenly, just by making those choices, the choice makes us. Thank you so much. I know I've run over. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to take them now. And I'm just going to stop share. Fantastic.
Thank you, Rachel. Maybe we can take one question, Ingrid, if we have some questions coming in. Yeah.
We do. One of the questions is, preparing for challenges and bouncing back from challenges is more than just about mindset stress management. What about skills you need to be prepared to bounce back? How can one focus on developing those critical skills?
I think when it comes to bouncing back, and again, to do with resilience, it has to do with what is it that is the problem, and that is the skill you need to develop. So if, for example, you keep getting in a situation where you're just not doing enough, or when you're being asked in a team meeting for your output and you just aren't there, then you need to take extra classes, obviously. If it's a case of, look, they're picking on me at the workplace, or I feel like I'm being picked on. And a lot, and I think one of the ladies mentioned it today, or they will mention it later on. I apologize if I'm having a little bit of deja vu. Is sometimes if you think that you are being picked on, or if you think something is happening and it's some sort of discrimination, then you're probably right. So you need to work out, well, what does thick skin look like? How do I develop thick skin? And who do I need to talk to if this needs to be escalated? So it's not a case of a great big toolbox of resilience or tools. It's, well, which of these tools inside of these toolboxes do I need to hone? Which of these skills do I need to have? Now, once I decide what skill that is, I then need to find someone or some piece of literature that can help me hone that skill. It might be a mentor you've seen who, do you know what? I just love the way they do business. You know, they're not fazed by anything that comes their way. They keep going. So I'm going to approach this person and I say, can you tell me what tools or what skills you employ that you don't completely fall apart and crumble if you get criticized? So for me, I think it's a case of working out what it is that is giving you that innate fear and then honing that skill.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rachel. Kavita, back to you.
Ingrid.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Thanks, Ingrid, for the question. We will be moving on to our next speaker, who will be speaking on the topic, The Power of You. It's by Harninder Bassi. Over to you, Harninder.
Thank you, Kavita, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking with all of you today. So Rachel shared with you how to do, and I'm going to be sharing with you how to be. Having a strong sense of who you are and your unique purpose in life is an essential part of being and a foundation for self-confidence. And this is especially true for women in tech who are constantly coached on how to change to fit into an industry where only 13% of the workforce is engaged. As Maya Angelou once said, in diversity, there is beauty and there is strength. And I truly believe that if we all are who we are meant to be and share our unique gifts with the world, we can be more engaged as a society and change not only the industry, but also the world. Today, I'll be sharing with you my personal journey and tips and tricks on how I define and live who I am. I was born in England and lived in India from the age of 2 to 7. At the age of 7, I started school in England, not knowing a word of English. I was called stupid, dumb, and much worse. But instead of letting that define who I am, I decided I was going to work hard and become one of the smartest people in the room. As a result, I was the first female in my family to go to university, have a professional career, and go on an international assignment. But I continued to hit walls in the world of work. Early on in my career, I was given the opportunity to go on an assignment to our Netherlands office. I was super excited and ready to go. But my excitement was short-lived. Within a few weeks into the assignment, I was angry and I was frustrated. I came home because my presence and my voice was being ignored. The old white male-dominated environment ignored me, shut me out, and told me I did not belong. So I did what every other 22-year-old does at that point. I called my mom in tears, and she told me first to pull myself together and then asked, why would they pay to send you to the Netherlands if you were the same as them? And that's when it hit me. It was exactly because I was so different that I was given this opportunity. It was my differences that were my unique value. And it was this shift from hating and hiding my differences to being empowered by my differences that ultimately helped me to succeed. But it's not easy to be yourself, especially for women. We are conditioned through our upbringing and social media as to who we should be. Boys grow up hearing, boys will be boys. And on the flip side, girls hear, that's not very ladylike. The underlying message being that boys can be themselves and girls need to conform to what society needs them to be. And although we've gone through the agricultural, technological, and the agricultural revolution, our societal norms haven't kept up pace with the way we've changed our lives and works with more women now in the workforce. That's why we have to be very intentional and push against the grain to be our true selves. If we don't define who we are, the world will happily tell us who they need to be, who they need us to be to fulfill their needs, whether that's a dutiful wife, mother, daughter, or a committed employee. This creates unrealistic and unattainable measures by which we assess ourselves leading to a feeling of failure and inadequacy. Only you should be defining who you are not, and what you want out of your life. This is not something to be outsourced. And it all starts with self-awareness. I use my bus technique. First, define your core beliefs and values. Know what's important to you. Listen to that inner voice, whether it's through meditation or going on a long walk. And think about the people that you admire. What do they stand for? What attracted you to them? Second, do a personal inventory to understand what your unique gift is. Know your innate strengths, what you enjoy, and what you're good at. Think about the unique experiences that you've had in life that give you a unique viewpoint. Third, know what a fulfilling life means for you. Question and break away from society's definition of happiness and success. Think about what makes you come alive and what makes you lose track of time. Think about what you want your legacy to be. Imagine the last few hours of your life. Who do you see? How do you feel? And what are you most proud of? And last but vital step is free yourself from comparison to others and forgive yourself for not being perfect. We set unrealistic expectations of ourselves based upon what we think others need and what we see on social media. Honestly, there was a time when I thought if I hadn't climbed and meditated on the top of Mount Everest by 7 a.m. each day, that I was going to fail. And clearly, I failed a lot. And going through the bus technique is not a one-time exercise. It's an ongoing conversation with yourself because you change as you go through different stages of life and have different experiences. But once you know who you are, how do you embody who you are? I use my remove, reduce, and replace method. But if you want to be more aggressive, you can use your rip and replace. First, fire that inner critic. You know the one I mean, that itty shitty bitty voice in your head that says, you're not worthy or you can't do this. Fire him. Second, remove the activities that you do out of boredom, whether that's Netflix or social media, and replace with activities that fulfill you, whether that's learning a new skill, a new hobby, self-care, or spending time with loved ones. Third, remove relationships that leave you feeling depleted and don't give you mutual respect. And put boundaries around those that you can't remove. And then replace with people that champion you to be more of who you are meant to be. And last but not least, let go of this societal conditioning that wants to drag you back into conforming and unleash the power of your unique self. It is when we know who we are and what our unique value is that we can have the confidence to speak up and show up as our true selves. And the world needs you to be your unique self and share your unique gift, because that is how we engage as a society to change the industry and the world. So always be your beautiful self. In closing, I would just like to share a poem that I wrote about how to define the importance of defining and staying true to yourself. So I'd ask you just to stop what you're doing, close your eyes, and just listen. I am me in my words. I am me in my actions. I am me when I am alone. I am me when I am with you. I am me, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I am me, the imperfect and the crazy. I am more than my name. I am more than the titles given to me. I am alive when I am me. I am enough when I am me. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Harninder. That was really a great, talk. Ingrid, we may have time for just one question for Harninder, and then we can be ready for the next speaker.
Absolutely. I do have one question in the chat. It asks, If there's one thing you would like changed in your workplace, what would that be?
One place. Right now, the easy answer would be just to get to see people. I'm a very people person. And so we're always looking for ways to have non-work meetings. We do happy social hours just to meet people, because I think when you get to know people as individuals, that's when we can be more successful as a team at work and at home. So for me right now, it's seeing how we can find time to be together outside of business meetings.
It's great. Harninder, thank you for that great session. We will move on to our next speaker, Olga Specjalska. She'll be talking on Unbroken, celebrating flaws and imperfections, making us strong and unique. With that, Olga, over to you.
Thank you, Kavita. 2020 broke us in many ways. And we don't always think about broken things as being beautiful and positive. We often cover up the breaks. We cover up the failures, and especially if they were a result of our mistakes. Broken vase, broken bone, broken relationship or career. How do we fix that? Turns out there are better ways than super glue. I've learned to look at it differently years ago when I moved to Japan and learned about kintsugi. So kintsugi is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery. This technique teaches us that when something breaks, we don't piece it together with super glue, pretending like it's never happened. It teaches us how we can mend things together with golden, silver, or platinum lacquer instead. It is an art of putting together broken pieces in a way that highlights the breaks and makes them stronger and unique in that way. It treats breakage and repair as part of the history of that object, rather than something that we should hide and camouflage. So there are three main types of kintsugi: crack, piece method, and a joint core. Let's see what those three different methods could teach us about repairing broken pieces. So first of all, crack. This is the use of gold dust and resin or lacquer to attach broken pieces with minimum overlap or filling from the missing pieces. See, I spent a long time preparing myself for my move to Japan. I've learned a lot about the etiquette, about the customs, even before I got there. And then I tried to follow perfectly and apply everything that I've learned. I remember one time there was a big meeting I was hosting with external guests, and I followed all of the business card protocol. I was very relieved after that part was over and it went well. And I just took the seat to start the meeting ahead of everyone else. And then I realized a minute later that everyone was standing and looking at me. So they were a little bit confused, waiting for the invitation from me as a host to invite them to sit. I realized my mistake in that moment. I apologized and shared how I was still learning the customs and I'll do better. But it also allowed me to share that, you know, I came from a different place, to share where I came from. And it allowed me to be vulnerable with them. It was a great opportunity to build that trust and show the respect for the culture, my desire to learn. In the end, I believe that it actually helped to make my relationships stay stronger. And of course, I didn't make the same mistake again. So when you think about anything that broke for you recently, what would be a golden luck to make that piece stronger and beautiful? I encourage you to share your own examples in the chat right now. So the second kintsugi method is called piece method. And this is where a replacement ceramic fragment is not available to us. And the entirety of the edition is made out of that golden compound. We have all been in situations in life when a piece was just not available to us. We can still create really beautiful things. So what is that option B? What your golden feeling would be? For me, not speaking Japanese while I was moving to Japan was probably one of the biggest missing pieces. And when I moved there, one of my first tasks was to produce a promotional video for the program that I was running there. I didn't know the language, didn't know the agencies and the style of advertisement, and it's very, very different over there. And I made it by piecing few things together. Use of Google Translate, yes, Google Translate, use of cartoons and sketches, incredible kindness and willingness to help from my colleagues, and my own tenacity to persevere, continue, and focus on the art of possible. This was my golden luck compound. As leaders, we rarely have all of the pieces of the puzzle in place. So the question is, what is the art of possible? What's not on the table? What could you create by using unexpected feelings to create a beautiful piece of art? Again, encourage you to share some of your thoughts and ideas on that in the chat box. So the third method of kintsugi is called joint call. And this method helps us deal with situations where a whole big piece is missing, literally like almost a half of something. In this case, following the art of kintsugi, we would try to put together similarly shaped but not matching fragments to replace what's missing. It would create kind of like a patchwork effect. I remember at one of the networking events, I met a great, talented candidate. She shared with me how she would love to come back to corporate world and be part of something bigger, but not in full-time capacity, and how she struggled with the situation because it was very hard to find senior and experienced roles in corporate world that would offer anything else but full-time. So later I found myself having more conversations and more discussions like that. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to create change. So the next role I had available in my team, I decided to open in a job share capacity between two talented professionals. It was a lot of hard work to get that business case approved. But now we have great learnings from that first job share we created. And this is opening doors to more job share roles being created in the future. So when we don't have full piece, how can we join a few different pieces together? Think about really non-conventional ways to create creative, new, beautiful pieces of art. Just like an object can become beautiful and stronger thanks to those breaks, we as humans also become more beautiful and stronger. You are unique, you are beautiful, and you are one in a world piece of art. Our stories are very unique, and they are there to be celebrated. Through the tough times, the difficult times, all of the mistakes and the failures, they are the golden luck that repairs our broken bones, makes us stronger, very special, and lets us fly. So see yourself this way, and others will as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga, for a great presentation. Ingrid, maybe we have time for a couple of questions today for Olga.
Absolutely. I have one question here. It asks, how do you approach getting leadership to consider or approve non-conventional solutions?
Strong business cases. It's hard to walk away from those. And a lot of input. Very often when we put on the table something that hasn't been done before, it's on us to do a lot of hard work beforehand and test it ourselves, because if we are not convinced, it's hard to convince others. At the same time, it's always it's always a great idea to get more brains, more eyes over our ideas we want to bring forward. So test it first with many people, try to look at it from many different angles, build a strong business case, and then stand up for what you believe is a great idea.
Absolutely, Olga. Another question, moving to Japan, it sounds like it must have been a scary and exciting. Where did you find the courage and support to make such a big decision in your career?
It was interesting because just as many people there excited for me, there were also many people who were advising me against it. And it comes down to listening to everyone around us, but in the end, that's our life, our career, and our decisions we make. For me, it is actually the fear factor. So if opportunity ahead create some tension and some fear within me, it means that it's a big stretch opportunity and a growth opportunity. So what's the worst that can happen? You can learn a lot from it. And that would be my approach to evaluating opportunities, scary opportunities like that.
Thank you so much, Olga.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid and Olga, for that great presentation and the questions. We will move on to the last speaker in our lightning talk session. The topic is Art of Tooting Your Own Horn, and Mamta Suri will be presenting to us. So with that, Mamta, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavita. It is an honor to be presenting to all of you and following these amazing women in this session for resilience. I'll be talking about Art of Tooting Your Own Horn and how to be visible and succeed in your career. I learned the importance of doing this in my own career over 5 years when I was into the career for the first 5 years, when I believed that hard work alone is enough. I saw my peers advancing their career, getting credit for the projects, not because they were doing any better or more work, it's because they were talking about their work. This is what I'll be sharing with you today, and I'll be going over the art of tooting your own horn to help in your career. Before we get started, I have a question for you. If you plant a seed, but don't water it and don't provide it any sunlight, what would you think would happen to that seed? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? It won't grow, and no one would even know there was a seed in the soil. Think of your career the same way. Hard work is the seed, and self-promotion is the sunlight and water. If you don't advocate for yourself and tell others about your work, it'll be very difficult for your career to grow. And that's what I'll be covering today. What is tooting your own horn, the role of tooting in your own career, and how to do it right way and get ahead. So what is tooting your own horn? What words come to mind when you think about this word? And I have actually posted a question in the chat earlier as well. So please type it in the chat. What words come to your mind when you think about tooting your own horn? Based on some of the responses and my conversation, some of the words might be bragging, it's all about me. Maybe these people who are actually, talking in a blowhorn. But I want to tell you, it's not about those things. There is an art to it, and you have to do it in a way that feels natural and authentic to you. The art is thinking differently. Don't think about it as bragging. It's about owning your work, being proud of your work, and sharing it with others. You have to advocate for yourself, because if you don't do it, then who will? Put it another way, if you don't toot your own horn, no one is doing any tooting for you. Data shows us that self-promotion leads to getting hired, promoted, and getting ahead in your career. So if you provide nourishment to your career with self-promotion and self-advocacy, then the seed of your career will grow. Now that we know how important it is to self-promote, I will go over actionable tips so that you can self-promote and toot in the right way. The first tip is mindset. Instead of seeing self-promotion as a necessary evil or as bragging, you need to reframe it and see it as self-promotion and self-advocacy. You can think of it as a way to help others understand your work and your contributions. You need to take ownership of your work and take ownership of your own career. Hard work is important, no doubt, but you need to educate your peers and managers about the brilliant work that you're doing. It's a good tool in your toolbox, use it. Second thing is keep an accomplishment log. It's very simple. It's one of the things I've been doing for a long time. What it is, it's an ongoing list of things you have completed. The format doesn't matter, Google Doc, Notepad, Pen, any note-taking app. The important thing is to take a note of things you're completing, challenges you're overcoming, and any key achievements you have done. Do it weekly at least, because this is a good way to refresh your memory before any important meeting, performance reviews, or even those elevator pitches. And it also helps you overcome your imposter syndrome. So try it out. Speaking up. Oftentimes we assume that people in our team and manager know what it is that I'm working on, so there's no need to talk about it. But we need to understand that your manager and your peers are preoccupied with their own priorities, especially in this pandemic. So don't assume they know. Speak up and help them understand your contributions and educate your manager, colleagues, even manager's manager on the value you're providing to the company. It is your responsibility. Another part of speaking up is speak up in meetings. You don't have to talk about yourself in these meetings, but ask questions, be visible, be an active participant, be part of the discussions. So do speak up. If you take away just one thing from this presentation today, I want it to be this one: be your own friend. According to a study published, women downplay their own accomplishments but have no trouble promoting a friend. This is to say, we are much nicer to our friends than we are to ourselves. We are often very critical of ourselves, and it will help to think from a friend's perspective. How would you highlight the recent wins if your friend had achieved them? Thinking from a third-person perspective and in terms of advocating for a friend, you can feel more confident about verbalizing your own contributions. So try it out, be nice to yourself, and be your own friend. I think you're gonna like it. And the fifth tip is have a trusted advisory board with mentors and trustees. Self-promotion is not natural for many people. It wasn't for me, but it is a learnable skill. And one way to do that is practice this with mentors. You can have mentors above you, below you, or even at the same level. This is your trusted group. If you think that talking about your accomplishment can seem like bragging, this is a place to practice it. And this is a great conference where you're meeting like-minded people. So with the network you're forming here, you can create a group. How many people would like to be part of such a group where you can talk about your accomplishment, practice talking in front of others without judgment and giving feedback to each other? You can post it in the chat. And I'm sure many of you will be interested. And if one of you can take a lead and create a group and continue this conversation even outside, this could be your safe space to talk about your work that feels more natural to you. So self-promotion and self-advocacy are important tools in your tool set, and you can use them to help your career grow, because if you don't toot your own horn, then don't complain that there is no music. So to recap, you can start tooting your own horn the right way that's authentic to you by first having the right mindset. Consider it as self-advocacy, an important tool for you. Keep track of all of your accomplishments in an accomplishment log. Speaking up is very important, because if you don't speak up, no one will do it for you. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes, I promise. And be your own friend, be nice to yourself, and think that you're advocating for a friend. Find mentors and trustees who can talk about your work and contributions and practice in a way that feels natural to you. Let's not leave the seed of hard work without water and sunlight. Let's nourish it with self-promotion and self-advocacy for advancing and growing our careers. Thank you. Are there any questions, Ingrid?
Thank you, Mamta. Yeah, Ingrid, we can take a couple of questions for Mamta.
Sure, I do have one question. How can folks toot their own horn when they've been in a position for quite some time and they haven't done it before?
Yeah, so start doing it. I think the easiest way to, practice any skill is to start doing it. Start slowly, talk about your weekly goals and accomplishments. Do it in a one-on-one environment with your manager if it feels natural to you. And you don't have to keep saying that I did this or I did that. You can talk about it in a way that this project that we're working on. I was able to meet with this client, and this is what we have discussed. And this was a challenge, but this is how we have decided to overcome. So you can talk about in terms of we and I, but the important thing is that you have to start talking about your contributions.
Thank you so much, Mamta.
Any other questions, Ingrid, that we had for Mamta, or that was all?
That's all.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, I want to thank everyone, the speakers, Sarah and Sarah, Olga, as well as Rachel. We had Harninder and also Mamta. So I want to thank each one of you for providing all these great nuggets in your different approaches, your diverse experiences. And on behalf of WT2, I want to also encourage the audience to continue to provide their questions and ask questions. Use the VMware app. We will also have a meetup link that will be shared later on. And I really want to thank the audience for continuing to share your questions. Ingrid, Deanna, and all the organizers, thanks once again for this great lightning talk session. With that, we come to the end of today's lightning talk session. Thank you, everyone.